All right, welcome back everybody to Talk Tickers for another deep dive. And this time we're going to be diving into General Motors Q3 2024 earnings call. We've got the press release right here and the full call transcript, so we'll really be able to break it all down. We'll be covering everything from those roaring Corvettes to their big EV push. We're going to be looking at what's working, what's not working, and what it all means for the future of GM.
Sounds good.
Okay. So right off the bat, in the press release, something that really jumped out at me was that GM is raising their full-year earnings guidance for the third time this year. What are your initial thoughts on that when you're looking at the financial figures?
Well, it is pretty unheard of to have 3 guidance raises in 1 year, especially in a market like this one, which has been so volatile, but it shows that GM is meeting and exceeding their own expectations, which signals confidence in their strategy.
Yeah, it seems like they're really crushing it. And actually, Mary Barra, in her opening statement during the earnings call, said something pretty crazy. She said that the new Chevrolet Corvette ZR1 is officially their fastest car ever, at a mind-blowing 233 miles per hour.
Wow. It's interesting how, even with all of this focus on EVs, they're still staying true to their performance car legacy with the Corvette, which is a smart move because it keeps the fans happy, but it also attracts a new generation of enthusiasts as well.
Yeah. Speaking of that balance between performance cars and EVs, this was a huge surprise in the press release. GM's North American EV sales actually outsold their gas-powered cars for the first time in Q3.
It really is a turning point, showing that the EV transition is gaining some serious traction.
Yeah, for sure. What do you think is giving them an edge in the EV game?
I would say a major advantage is their vertical integration with LG Energy Solution for battery production.
Okay, can you explain what you mean by that?
So vertical integration basically means they control more of the battery production process. So from raw materials to the finished product, this gives them a lot more control over their supply chain, which could result in stable EV prices and maybe even some faster innovation.
That's really interesting. So it's like they're building their own little electric engine powerhouse?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's not all sunshine and rainbows for GM, right?
Yeah.
They did mention some ongoing challenges in the Chinese market.
Oh, absolutely. China's EV market is insanely competitive. The domestic companies there are putting up a really good fight.
So what is their plan of attack in China?
It sounds like they are actively restructuring their operations in China to try and find a path to sustainable profitability.
Interesting, yeah. Now, back on home turf, GM's SUV lineup is still a major cash cow for them. The Traverse, the Acadia, the Enclave, they're selling like hotcakes.
Yeah.
With higher average transaction prices as well.
Yeah. And this is a key part of their strategy. GM is using that strength in those profitable SUVs to fuel its EV ambitions.
So they're using the money they're making on those cars to fund their EV push.
Exactly. It helps to offset any of those losses from the EV investments.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Okay, this next part raised my eyebrows a little bit. GM had to increase their warranty cost accruals by $700 million this quarter. What? Is that a red flag?
Well, it seems like it's mostly driven by inflation and a few specific quality issues, but they said they have already addressed these issues.
Okay, so they're saying it's not a systemic problem.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
All right, so to wrap up this initial part of our deep dive, it seems like Paul Jacobson, GM's CFO, ended the earnings call on a pretty positive note. They're expecting their 2025 earnings to match this year's strong performance, even with continued investment in EVs.
Yeah, it's almost like they're saying, we're playing the long game here. They're really confident that this dual strategy of dominating the SUV market and aggressively pushing EVs is going to pay off.
It's a bold strategy for sure, but after digging into this a little bit, I kind of think they might be able to pull it off.
Yeah, me too.
Let's take a quick pause, hear from our sponsor. And we'll be right back to continue our deep dive into GM's Q3 2024 earnings call.
Okay, so we're back. And we're ready to dig a little deeper into some of these details from GM's Q3 earnings call, looking at both the press release and the call transcript. What really stood out to you?
You know, I'm really fascinated by how they're managing this whole transition, from gas-powered vehicles to electric. It's like they're walking a tightrope between two worlds. Like, on one hand, you have them celebrating this record-breaking Corvette, showing their commitment to performance cars and keeping those fans happy. But then they drop this bombshell about EVs outselling gas cars in North America, which is a huge sign that they're serious about this electric future.
Yeah. It's a tough balancing act for sure. And it makes sense considering how volatile and unpredictable the EV market is right now. They're not putting all of their eggs in one basket quite yet.
Right. Exactly. And And it's smart how they're using those strong SUV sales, which we know are still really profitable. To fund that EV expansion, they're kind of playing both sides and staying in the game no matter what happens.
It's a classic example of using your strengths to fuel your future growth.
Yeah.
And they're not just sitting around. Like we said, they're tackling challenges head on, like those warranty cost increases and that fierce competition in China.
Yeah, speaking of China, I'm curious to see what restructuring plans they actually come up with, because that market is a beast. Mary Barra mentioned some meetings happening in Q4, so hopefully they'll have some more information then.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. China's too big to ignore, but they need to figure out a way to approach it strategically. It did sound like they're open to partnerships, which could be a smart move.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued by that mention of a potential partnership with Hyundai. They were being pretty tight-lipped about the specifics,
Right.
but I think that just makes it even more exciting.
Definitely. Okay, so let's talk about those ambitious 2025 earnings projections. Can GM really achieve similar results to this year, even with increased EV investment?
That's a bold claim for sure,
Hmm.
but I don't think it's totally out of reach. They did say they have achieved variable profit positive on their EVs, which is a big deal. And they're really focused on driving down costs and being more efficient. Plus, there's that EV manufacturing credit that they're getting,
Right.
which is a huge advantage.
You're right. And it really seems like they're starting to unlock some of those cost savings that come with that vertical integration. Like we talked about earlier, having control over the supply chain is proving to be valuable.
Yeah, for sure. And we can't forget about their deal with Tesla. To give GM EV owners access to the supercharger network, that's huge for addressing range anxiety.
Absolutely. It's genius. They're using Tesla's existing infrastructure to level up their EV game.
Yeah. What impresses me is their commitment to the long game. They're not sacrificing long-term goals for any short-term gains. They're investing a lot in research and development, even if it means taking a small hit on their profits right now.
Yeah, it shows that they're thinking ahead.
Yeah.
And not just reacting to whatever the market is doing right now. And I think it's refreshing that they're acknowledging these uncertainties and challenges, like a potential slowdown in the EV market. They're not sugarcoating anything.
Yeah, I agree. Transparency definitely builds trust.
For sure.
So, taking into account everything we've discussed so far, the financial performance, the strategy, all of that, what are your overall thoughts on GM's Q3 performance?
I'd say it's pretty impressive. Despite all of the headwinds and uncertainties in the market, they're still delivering solid results, exceeding expectations, and it seems like they're really setting themselves up to be a major player in this EV market. They're thriving, not just surviving.
Yeah, I completely agree. And what stands out to me is their ability to adapt. They're not clinging to the past. They're embracing the future and using their strengths to navigate this transition. They're not afraid to take a risk, which I think is really important in this industry.
Yeah, it's like they're going through this metamorphosis from a gas-guzzling giant to an electric powerhouse.
Exactly. They're setting a high bar for traditional automakers to follow.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so they've got the speed, they've got the strategy, they've got the resilience, but what about the long game? Can they really keep this momentum going and stay ahead of the curve in this market? It seems like it's constantly changing.
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's one that we'll continue to explore as we wrap up our deep dive into GM's Q3 2024 earnings call.
Okay, so we're back and wrapping up our deep dive into GM's Q3 performance. We've covered a lot of ground, their financial successes, that strategy of balancing those gas and electric vehicles, their ambitions in the global market. But there's one crucial element that we haven't really touched on yet, and that's the human element.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's really easy to get lost in the numbers and the strategies. But what often gets overlooked is the impact on the people involved. Mary Barra actually made a really good point of acknowledging this. She talked about the resilience of their team, their suppliers, and their dealers, especially those who were affected by the hurricanes in the Southeast.
Oh yeah, she did. And she even shared a story about one of their suppliers called RIS Solutions, who went above and beyond to help their employees, their community, and GM. They drilled a new well to get the water service back up and running after the storm.
Wow, that's incredible. That's real dedication. It really shows how committed everyone in GM's network is. It's a good reminder that behind all of these impressive numbers, there are real people facing real challenges, and they're finding a way to overcome those challenges.
It's a powerful testament to human resilience, and it shows how important those partnerships are. It's not just about GM succeeding. It's about their suppliers and dealers succeeding as well.
Exactly. They're all in this together, navigating the unpredictable market and supporting each other along the way.
Yeah. I also noticed that Mary Barra emphasized dealer outreach and training, especially when it comes to EVs. They're really investing in making sure that their people have the right knowledge and the skills to confidently sell those new technologies.
Yeah, that makes sense. You can have the most innovative product out there, but if the people selling it don't understand it, or they can't explain it to the customers, then you're really missing out. It seems like GM gets that.
Yeah. It's like they're building an army of EV experts. And of course, we can't forget about the customers themselves. It seems like GM is really listening to what people want, and they're tailoring their product lineup to give people a lot of options, from the affordable EVs to those high-performance sports cars.
It's all about offering people a choice and giving them the flexibility to choose what they want, whether they're ready for an EV or not.
Okay, so we've looked at the numbers, we've broken down their strategy, and we've even talked about the people involved. What's the final verdict on GM's Q3 performance?
I think I would say transformative. They're not just adapting to the change, they're the ones driving it.
They're really proving that even those big traditional automakers can evolve and innovate and compete in this new electric age.
It's a powerful message to the whole industry.
And for anyone out there who's still doubting the potential of EVs, GM's performance this quarter is a clear sign that the electric revolution is here to stay.
Yeah, it's definitely here.
So, as we wrap up this deep dive, what is the one key takeaway you want our listeners to remember?
I'd say GM is showing everyone that you can play both sides. You can dominate with those traditional vehicles while also making huge moves in the EV space. And their strategy is clearly working. It will be interesting to see what they do in the future.
It really will. That's it for today's show. Thanks for tuning in to Talk Tickers, and we'll catch you on the next one.